everyone, it's Chris. I'm a content developer and project management specialist here at N2K Networks. I'm also your host for this week's edition of CertByte, where I share a practice test question from our suite of industry-leading content and a study tip to help you achieve the professional certifications you need to fast-track your career growth in IT, cybersecurity, and project management. Today's question targets the Cisco Certified Network Associate CCNA exam 200301 version 1.1, which was updated in April 2024. This exam tests skills related to network fundamentals, along with new topics such as generative AI, cloud network management, and machine learning. I've enlisted Troy as our new guest host today. He's a specialist in all things Cisco, ISACA, and EC Council. Welcome, Troy. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Chris. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And before we get into it, be sure to stick around after our question for our special study bit for this test, as well as for the latest news on upcoming N2K Practice Tests. Okay, so we're going to be turning the tables, and Troy, you're going to be asking me today's question. Troy, I turn it over to you.
Okay, Chris, here's your question. You've discovered that hackers are gaining access to your web wireless network. After researching, you discovered that the hackers are using war driving methods. You need to protect against this type of attack. What should you do? And it tells us that there is more than one correct answer.
Okay.
Your choices are change the default SSID, disable the SSID broadcast, configure the network to use authenticated access only, or configure the web protocol to use a 128-bit key.
Okay, so before I answer, Troy, I understand this is under the Network Fundamentals objective and the Describe Wireless Principles sub-objective, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and I have more than one correct answer. So on the exam, should students expect select more than one correct answer, or do they say select two, etc.?
Well, it may even be more difficult than that, Chris. I hate to inform you that sometimes they may even say select all that apply.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes it even tougher. So to help me out, since this is way out of my wheelhouse, what does WEP stand for?
It stands for Wired Equivalent Privacy, the name attempting to imply that the security is as good as being on a wired network.
All right. And for those who are not familiar with what a word driving method is, could you explain that a little bit?
War driving is when a hacker rides around in a car, that's where the driving comes from, and they use a high-powered antenna attached to a laptop to see if they can discover what wireless networks are in the area. And sometimes they'll go a step further and they'll record information about the network, its security settings, whether it's an open network or not, and they sometimes share that information online with other hackers.
Okay. Wow. All right. So I'm going to assume there's never an option on this exam to select all answer choices. So I'm going to choose the following based on them sounding like a logical set of sequential steps. I'm going to select B, disable the SSID broadcast, and C, configure the network to use authenticated access only. Am I right?
Good try, Chris. You're partially correct. The answers are actually A, B, and C. You had three choices here. Here's why. To protect against war driving, you need to change the default SSID, disable the SSID broadcast, and configure the network to use authenticated access only. You would change the default SSID because if you don't change that default, hackers generally see that and assume that you haven't changed any of the other security settings, such as the administrator password. You would disable the SSID broadcast to prevent them from even seeing the network when they scan for networks. And then configuring the network to use authenticated access only would be a final step to ensure that even if somehow they do get access to the network, they can't log in. Now, you shouldn't configure the web protocol to use a 128-bit key because in recent years, this particular encryption protocol has been proven to be ineffective. It's very easily cracked. In fact, it's so easily cracked that we have students doing it in classes now. So that would not be something you want to use.
Wow. Okay. That's all great info. Now, we're going to get into your study bit in a moment, but how would you instruct students on how they can prepare for a question of this type?
Well, first of all, I would say don't jump for the first shiny object that you see. Oftentimes, when you're looking at a set of options to a question, one may jump right out at you as being correct. And in your excitement to know the right answer, you may not read the question as completely as you should. And there could be one small detail in the question that rules that particular option out. So carefully consider all the options before you jump for what you think may be the quickest answer.
That is really great advice, and that could probably apply across many different types of exams. So great. And who would you say is the target audience for this exam?
Well, the CCNA exam is sort of the entry-level exam to the Cisco ecosystem. So the target audience for this would be people that are just beginning to get into Cisco. On the other hand, I would say that anybody that wants to take this exam should have some background. They probably want to have already passed some other exams like the Network Plus exam and the A Plus exam. They probably want to have some background in networking before they do this exam.
Great information and question, Troy. All right, so now it's time to discuss the study bit for this test. What do you have for us?
The study bit for this one is time management because you're going to have, based on the number of items you're going to get and the amount of time you have, you're going to have 90 seconds per item to answer these questions. So you can't get stuck on one. If you come to a question and you don't know the answer, you want to think about it, move on. Make sure you answer all the questions that you know first so that you don't leave any unanswered.
Awesome tip. Thanks so much for being here with me today, Troy.
You're welcome.
And as we wrap up today's episode, are there any upcoming practice tests you'd like to promote here?
Yes, we just released the CompTIA Tech Plus, the AWS Certified AI Practitioner, and Azure AI Engineer Associate practice tests. And we'll also have more coming up for CompTIA, Microsoft, and Oracle next month.
Thanks so much, Troy. And thank you for joining me for this week's CertByte. If you're actively studying for this certification and have any questions about study tips or even future certification questions you'd like to see, please feel free to email me at certbyte@n2k.com. That's CertByte@n2k.com. If you'd like to learn more about N2K's practice tests, visit our website at n2k.com/certify. For sources and citations for this question, please check out our show notes. Happy certifying.